The first tab in the Sustainability ROI Workbook is the Introduction Worksheet. This slide shows its outline, and the video will be a quick overview of each of the worksheet sections. So here's the top of the Introduction Worksheet. We'll scroll down a little bit and see the big three justifications, which frame the main elements of the business case for any project. And the two figures reinforce that what used to be an either-or positioning of the do the right thing justification has evolved in the 21st century to being a both and relationship, that doing the right thing drives new opportunities and mitigates new risks. The next section is about how this workbook is a CFO-friendly business case. When people need money, capital, from finance, the CFO, to fund a project, they normally fill out a capital expenditure request form. The figure on the left shows that the CapEx guide that was published by the CFO Leadership Network a couple of years ago says that the traditional CapEx form that's been used successfully for years should include new information these days to ensure that it is making well-informed, or at least better-informed, decisions than previously. The figure on the right shows how the capital expenditure request form that they recommend is captured as the format in the Sustainability ROI Workbook to frame all of the business case. So it takes the traditional form, the advice of the CFO Leadership Network, and it supplements that traditional information with additional information to ensure that the decisions will be better informed than they might have otherwise have been. You might also check that your finance department probably has a form that is called a CapEx request form or some equivalent of it, and update this workbook to ensure that it provides at least the basic information that they include in their current form. That is, tailor the workbook, this workbook, to ensure that it reflects your company's norms. The next section describes how the business case is attractive for sustainability champions, because it has a superset of all the best business case elements, that is to say the benefits, curated from over 20 different sustainability business case frameworks. So you can rest assured that this is going to end up with a very comprehensive business case, as well as some of the other features that are going to make this a very attractive approach for anybody that's trying to be able to show that their project is a good thing for the company, as well as for the environment and society. So the next section is prerequisites and tips. So let's just zero in on the prerequisites for a second and take a closer look at what they are. We'll magnify a little bit. So there are 5 of them. The first one's pretty straightforward. You need to know something about sustainability, and we'll assume that you do, then as you're proposing a project about it. So moving on to the second one, that you have some comfort with Excel or have access to it, and hopefully you have both of those. The third one is that you need to have a specific initiative in mind. And for the purpose of these help videos, we're going to be assuming that your initiative is a green retrofit of your company's headquarters building so that the company can reduce its carbon footprint. So a specific project in mind, and that's the one that we're going to be using in the help videos. You have a specific company in mind. We'll assume that you're doing this for a specific company. And then you're going to have the data and assumptions. And that's the tricky part. That's also the fun part. You'll need a current financial data profile of the company. You'll need to know its current revenue, how much it's currently spending on energy, on materials, on employees, and so on, so that you can estimate the percentage improvements on those amounts as a result of the project. So the question is, where do you get that information from? And that's what the tips help you figure out. So let's just slide over to the tips. The estimation tips. So the first tip is pretty obvious. You ask the people that know. You ask the people who own the data. Could be people in finance, could be people in strategy, could be people in the R&D functions, people that have access to the information that you're looking for. Could be in the HR function if you're looking for employee information. and your tickets to being able to get them to give you the information, because sometimes they're not that willing to, is that you need to have a little support from somebody with a title that says that they're interested in what this project might yield as well and are asking you to do this on their behalf or something along those lines. The second tip is that you might extrapolate from the company experience with similar trends. So if there's any experience the company has already had with these kinds of projects, you may be able to build on that base. And then you start looking outside, experience from others in your sector, experience of members of organizations that you may belong to that are into this as well, research papers, reports, articles, lots of different sources of what the possibilities might be, especially for improvements in various areas based on others' experience. There is a ton of information in the comment boxes that are associated with various cells in this workbook. Examples of what companies have been able to attain in each of these areas. So there's a lot of text there and some estimation guidance that's built into that, which could be a real quick start on some of the other points that are up above. And then the last one is you just take a guess, but you acknowledge that it is a guess, and see if you can find others who can help you come up with a more well-informed guess. Then you can do a sensitivity analysis and see, if this is a very important amount that you need to get right. If you improve the revenue by 5% as opposed to 4% or 10%, does that make a big difference to the end result? And in all of this, though, you want to make sure that you protect your credibility. This is not the only time you're going to be asking for support for a project, so you want to make sure that you build trust with those people. Don't whiz them, be conservative, acknowledge your sources, and make sure that you are backing up your estimates and your sources with credible information. Let me just go back to that first one, asking the data owners. This is more important than just finding out the data. This is about the dynamics of the project, and that comes to the human factor. So let me just scroll down to that slide. This is critical. The art of the business case process is more important than the accuracy of the numbers. What you want to be very careful about is that you co-create the business case, so that the other people who are going to be implementing the project or perhaps involved in its decision feel some co-ownership for the project, and maybe they co-propose it with you, and maybe they co-implement it with you, so that they are as excited about this project as you are. If they feel that you are going behind their back and looking for approval for something that they should have gone forward with in the first place, they will make darn sure that this thing doesn't work. So don't get into that dynamic. Make sure that you engage them appropriately in the quantification of all of these benefits, so that they are able to back up your estimates if asked by the finance group as to whether they agree with what it is that you're doing. So be smart about how you engage the other folks, use their expertise, their competence, and give them full credit for the help that they've been able to provide. So the main point of this section of prerequisites and tips is that it's not a problem that you don't know the data and assumptions already. It's almost a benefit, because that means that you have to ask others for help. And if you're smart about how you do that, they could become the project's biggest advocates, which would be fantastic. The next section is the context, the need for business action. And what it does is it reminds us of the relationship between the environment, society, and business, the nested interdependencies. That business has been impacting the nest for a while, and now we've kind of got a revenge of the nest scenario going on. And that leads to additional risks to the company, global risks, as articulated by the World Economic Forum each year. And how if a company starts to mitigate those risks and capture opportunities, it can actually do very well. And if it only implemented best practices of companies out there on the environmental and social front already that they have proven work, they can increase their profits by 51 to 81%. That's at a company level. So there's a big opportunity here for companies, and how the project level sustainability ROI workbook business case helps the company start to reap some of those benefits. So that's a bit of the background context. And then we get into the legend for the various worksheets. The main part of this is what's in the yellow and the white cells. Users fill in the yellow cells with their company's current baseline data. That's the baseline financial data that we talked about before. So the yellow cells indicate that that's your current company financial data. And then you fill in the blank white cells with estimates and assumptions about the percent improvement on those baseline numbers as a result of the project. So the white cells are the ones that you fill in. All of the other colors you don't need to touch. So in fact, you shouldn't touch, because some of them contain formulas and so on. So the important working cells are the yellow and the white cells. Some footnotes at the bottom, and that's it. So that's a quick review of the introduction worksheet with special emphasis on the prerequisites and tips section. The next video will be on the overview worksheet.